Let me tell you a story, one of wonder, intrigue, and lots of loot to earn. This is 2014 and the incredible video game company BUNGIE, previously known for their massive success and probably one of your favorite games, the Halo franchise, now set out to do it again with their newest series, Destiny. September 9th, 2014 may be the date to remember, but Destiny's story predates the launch. In fact, the first time you get a hint of Destiny is in Halo itself. When walking through one of the missions, you see a poster on the wall hanging there with an all too familiar logo. The poster states, "Destiny awaits." The hype train left the station way too fast. You see, Destiny had too much hype, and this inevitably led to its initial downfall. But then it rose, and rose like a phoenix, to be one of my and the community's favorite titles of all time. Hello, my name is Bonk, and I have played Destiny 1 and 2 way too much. If you want to interact with the channel, I stream sometimes, and will also post a link to my Destiny Discord, where you can come hang and do activities of any kind with me and my buds. We play raids, trials, anything like that. And right before we get into this, I'd like to disclaim that I do not own any of the footage used in this, and all clips taken from any other creators will be linked in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoy. Now comes the launch, September 9th, 2014, a time where players' hype was immeasurable. See, Destiny's launch wouldn't go as well as Bungie would have hoped for. In fact, although making money, the player base felt completely scammed. And to know why, you need to know what kind of game Destiny at launch was. A mess! That's right, a complete dumpster fire compared to what we have now. Now don't get me wrong, I love this game and almost every bit of it, except vanilla Destiny. This came out sadly after having to scrap the original story because of oversight, and had to rush a new campaign out extremely quickly and well. Did they do it? No, not at all. This story starts with you just getting the Kvastov just like you do in the new game as a new light now. The mission is great. It attempts to introduce you to the world of Destiny through letting you walk around the wasteland and find guns and fight dregs and shanks and all these cool little aliens that you're just getting to meet now. And I know what you're thinking, this sounds great. Well, let me tell you, it ends there. This is the last fun you have when it comes to the story, without even mentioning the mistake of Dinklebot. We're gonna move to the plot. There kinda isn't one. Allow me to elaborate. You get a story mission chain like normal, but it's so disconnected. You see the rushed parts coming through the main campaign, being you having to enter the Black Garden and destroy the big tumor. But even though this story centering around the Vex, you had to interact with all the different races in vanilla, but you never got to go anywhere with any of them. You basically only had half of a bagel toasted in the morning, and the other half was just normal, and you were like, that's fine. Not to mention all the problems with Crucible at launch. All I need to say is autos were meta, and you can probably figure out that that's kind of weird. Players were not happy with this game and gave lots of nasty feedback about the game, talking about all these terrible bugs and bad story. But then came the others, playing and loving vanilla and praising the gunplay. They loved the abilities and the classes, but they weren't louder. The other side was, and Bungie knew they had to make a change going to their next DLC, or they might not make a third. But before they had to do that, came the raid. This changed everything for players like me. The fake MMO title that seemed to follow Destiny like a curse. But a raid was a good step in the right direction. This would be the first actual endgame thing added to Destiny before there was a distinct lack of endgame, and players had that itch, and that itch was scratched by VoG. It was overly accepted as a great addition to the game and had plenty more chances for loot, and you killed a time god in the end, so kinda awesome. This was a great step by Bungo in making the players stay a little bit longer, and to this day, people still play VoG in its reprised version in Destiny 2. The Dark Below, the next DLC in the game. And with high hopes, you can guess how it did. Trash. Bad rating, lackluster fast story, but a new raid in the form of Crota's End. This raid was incredible the first few times, but after the new difficulty wore off, this raid was kinda bad, in my opinion, unless low manning it. It was a little too easy, and I was just disappointed. Although an upside to this DLC was it introduces one of the mainstays in Destiny, Eris Morn, the Hunter Guardian who was stripped of her light and her eyesight and had to replace her eyes with those of a Hive Acolyte. Yeah, those 3 dots, they're Hive eyes. Overall, looking at this early time of Destiny, I believe my feeling about these old DLCs has not shifted, but I guess nostalgia didn't work for this one. this would be the last to be in what I consider Destiny's Dark Ages. Because you guessed it, this one was kinda shit too. The story had us helping in a civil war in the new area and social space known as the Reef. We had to work with the Awoken's race, Queen Mara, Big Booba's Sov, against the fallen Kel Skolas who wished to be the Kel of Kells by uniting all of the fallen houses under one banner of his own. We eventually stop him atop a citadel where he's attempting to use Vex portal technology to teleport the rest of his army in. He is then captured and defeated, sent to the Prison of Elders, and we stand triumphant once again. This DLC was not the worst by far, but it wasn't the best. It wasn't even great. The story writing kind of felt rushed and awkward, and there was just straight up not a lot to do. No new raid even, like the previous two releases, but they didn't have anything. There was a new activity called the Prison of Elders, and I and lots of others in the community liked it, and I love Varix, the CEO of the Prison of Elders. Don't know why he's my type, I guess, so not overall. This terrible DLC is definitely not a rebuy if it's reprised in Destiny 2, but I doubt it will be. Most of the old stuff seems like it's free, like VOG when it comes back. Then came the figurative real-world traveler to end those dark ages previously mentioned. And what stopped them, you might ask? Well, the baddest guy of them all. Destiny players felt fatigue was showing, and were getting sick of the repetitive content droughts caused by lack of content in these previous releases. The Taken King caused a surge because this was truly an insane time to be a Guardian. Incredible new story with deep lore connections, setups for the future, and a new crazy good raid, and finally tons of amazing new guns to go after. Although we will get to the weapons that everyone loved later, the DLC followed the story of your Guardian taking down a hive god. With the ability to create mindless zombies through his power to take, the threat and the story shot to new levels with the ending mission. Spoilers for a long time ago, I'm just saying it anyway. The final mission, you fight Oryx in an incredibly exciting fight that climaxes in what seems like an absolute win, until the cutscene reveals the fake out. The Taken King takes himself. And dies, entering his throne world, kind of like a second life for certain hive gods. And our Guardian and co were sent to beat this crazy good King's Fall raid, to finally defeat this monster and bring his tyranny to an end. But that wasn't even it. You also got a piece of Oryx's sword at the end of that story mission. This became an extremely long quest that most players loved, where at the end you not only got a sword, which was a completely new weapon type back when King's Fall launched and there was only exotics, but 3 super-powered elemental exotic swords were the ones you could get. These swords were one of each element. The first was an exotic sword, and it was named Boltcaster. This was popular among PvP mains as their choice because the exotic ability of the sword was launching a projectile like the swords we have in D2, and was considered the weakest but was still really fun. This was the, now in D2, caster frame. So you right click and it throws out like that lightning ring if you were using like Temptation's hook. That's basically what this did, but it was an exotic. The second sword, and my personal favorite, and the one I chose at the end of the quest to get, or at the beginning of the quest, was a vortex frame called Dark Drinker. Kinda like the guillotine in D2, but you could non-stop heavy attack in Destiny 1. So you were basically a human DPS Beyblade, and it was fucking awesome, man. The final sword was the most popular in the community. This was probably because most people thought that this sword having a good single target meant that it would have the most damage. Although wrong on this for certain scenarios, Dark Drinker wins in DPS, but the Raise Lighter was no joke. It did have crazy good damage because of the ability to constantly uppercut bosses in a wave of solar blaze and damage. This was a great time in Destiny, and players hadn't even discovered it all. The next part will be the story of the Raid Exotic. This exotic was called the Touch of Malice. Lore-wise, this was the king's last FU, using the sword logic once again to his advantage. If you don't know, TLDR, the sword logic is the hive's guide to strength. If you kill someone, you gain their strength under the sword logic, and he used this by making himself into a weapon that you can use to defeat him, so technically, he is still on the winning side in the eyes of the sword logic, because he is still defeating his foes. This quest at the first completion of the raid, and lasts a really long time. It wasn't a terribly hard quest, but it definitely wasn't easy. This was also unlike most raid exotics, and was meta in the actual raid. The exotic perk allowed you to have infinite ammo, but as your ammo got lower, shooting would damage you. But when you're on your last bit of damage, your last bit of health, your damage was amped a bunch. And during that raid, in King's Fall, at one point in the final room, you are given immunity to deal damage while you're dealing damage to something. And this allowed you to deal mad damage as your 1 HP, and that damage buff would never leave since you literally couldn't die. And I've always wondered why this is the first and last time they made a raid exotic that had a specific reason to be used in the raid. And I really hope that they do this again. With all the new content, and believe me, I didn't even get close to mentioning it all, it was just some of the highlights of this incredible expansion. The community was just doing great overall at this point, but Destiny ran into some trouble because their intent was to release Destiny 2 next, but it would be delayed so long that they need something to fill the gap. No, I know what you're thinking. Like they're doing now by releasing the anniversary pack in a long season, but no, there was no seasons and there was no packs like that. The wait time was also way longer, so they pulled out their big gaping ass another insanely good DLC with so much to do. But before we move on, I'd like to make an honorable mention to my favorite weapon that I ever used out of King's Fall, and that was the Defiance of Yasmin Sniper. I fucking loved that thing. Alright. To Rise of Iron. This was awesome. Most people thought this DLC would be like the Dark Age ones since they thought it would be rushed due to Destiny 2 being the original plan for the next release, but boy were they wrong. A new social space opens atop Felwinter Peak, which is really annoying to climb for that Siva thing if you know what I'm talking about. In this space, you follow the story of the previous Iron Lords, ancient guardians with incredible strength and force of will, but they were defeated by a war mind named Rasputin, an ancient technology that had a lot of power and was used to defend the Earth. He used an old invention of the light times called Siva, a biological technology. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but you can augment yourself and your environment with it, so I'm thinking that's what it is. You have to fight off the fallen splicers, who are now attached to the Siva, and the Fallen, but you are told of a certain Archon priest that has been causing trouble, and you enter another raid, Wrath of the Machine. Also, Fortnite Tfue has world first. Lol. This raid was really fun, with some pretty interesting loot to score, but I want to talk about the exotics from this raid and the really interesting quests that led to one of my favorite exotics, still to this day, Outbreak Prime, eventually Outbreak Perfected in Destiny 2. This quest began with some weird monitors with the Siva logo found around the raid by the community. You had to get 4 of these. One required a huge puzzle including Morse code all throughout, even with a hidden one off the side of the map you had to shoot open. Then you need to complete the raid and defeat the final boss Axis to actually get the 5th and final monitor that was hidden until you defeat him. Then you get a quest called Channeling the Corruption. To complete this, you had to complete activities composed with a fire team of one of each class, a Warlock, a Titan, and a Hunter. Now, you may think this is super easy, but it actually wasn't. Like, a lot of people in D1 didn't play Hunter if they were PvE mains, compared to as much as... and Warlock, to be honest. Titans were the best for PvE, because Warlocks didn't have well in D1. And pulse rifle kills. Then you are given an item called the Siva Engine with a bunch of crazy code when you inspect it. Luckily, this community is the best, and they figured out this puzzle, which led to another puzzle right after. Then you head back into the raid and defeat the 3 bosses once again to get control grids. Once you do that, you'll be on the last step and yet another puzzle. After this puzzle was beaten thanks to some Rick and Morty viewers in the community, you receive the Outbreak Prime, a pulse rifle with a Siva aesthetic and Siva-based perks, which were incredibly good. One perk was basically Outlaw, but with the exotic perk was Parasitism, where headshot kills would spawn tiny Siva nanites that tracked people. Now, the reason I went over this almost more in depth than anything else before is because this video is my opinion on Destiny, and this right here was one of my favorite quest steps and quests in Destiny, with plenty of puzzles and cool codes with secret areas and a whole bunch of other stuff to keep you entertained. Not to mention how fun this gun was and still is today. If you ever have a Cypher in D2 and don't know what to buy, try Outbreak. Trust me, you'll fall in love. And now, Destiny 1's DLCs come to an end. This was the way to introduce new content for free and stop the previous issues of content drop before Destiny 2 came out. It was a revamp of old activities, and as the name indicates, it was full of plenty of triumphs for the 100%ers to grind out. Along with this came the revamp of all the old raids brought to the current light level and all raid armor and eye-pleasing ornaments that look so good. These were definitely my favorite armor pieces ever in Destiny to this day, and these raids also included earnable exotic variants to the legendary raid weapons. They would gain an element in the primary slot, or the kinetic if you just play D2. And the last thing of note was the revamped Trials of Osiris PvP mode that came with new armor ornaments. And these look so insane compared to the weird ancient Ascent armor we have now that I really wish we could just get them back. Like, I would just get that armor set. It's so good. I'll show it. This is the best. Next, I want to dive into something I haven't really mentioned a lot throughout this video, and it's been for a reason. PvP. The Crucible is a whole nother beast to tackle, and something many Destiny players find as their permanent home, farming blueberries with Felwinter's Lie. But in Destiny 1's history, PvP has had so many different metas, I can't really cover them all. But I will tell you some of the community's favorite weapons that made PvP worth the time, and you had plenty of fun with these 5 weapons I've chose. Hawkmoon. This was a 140 RPM exotic hand cannon in Destiny and had a different kind of feel for the sole reason of its perk and pure dopamine that it could release. Just like gambling, when you win it feels great, right? Well, Hawkmoon's perks in only Destiny 1 would have a small chance of stacking on one bullet in the mag, which would then gain the damage boost you needed to one tap, and that right one caw from this big boy, and you could be swept off your feet. In Destiny 2, you do require headshots beforehand to get this one shot. In Destiny 1, it was all luck, and you could just, your first bullet, boom. Next, I'd like to mention a legendary hand cannon, Eos Luna. I love this because of how similar it is to the Hawkmoon, even being able to roll one of the Hawkmoon special perks itself. It was also a 140 RPM hand cannon and is being reprised in Destiny 2 later this year. If you've been on Twitter, you've probably seen BUNGIE counting down the days till its return. So yeah, it was loved. 1,000 Yard Stare. This was a Vanguard aesthetic sniper that had super good perks and was overall beloved by the community. See what I did there? Also here, I would like to include my favorite sniper, Longbow Synthesis, a blue awesome zoom sniper that I want back super bad. Please, BUNGIE, please, I'm begging you, please give me it back. SUROS. This was an exotic auto rifle that had the ability to spin up as it shot. This resulted in lots of fun and really good gun overall. Although popular, SUROS wouldn't have had the same popularity with the pro scene because they had to compete against hand cannons, which were just better in the right hands. It was still lots of fun, and I recommend giving it a go in D2. Fatebringer. That's right, another hand cannon.
Another one.
This one is outshined even exotics with the incredible base stats and super good roll potential. It was definitely the most popular primary of the people that played PvP in Destiny 1, and I had actually been able to get the gun, and people still live by it in Destiny 2 Crucible. This would drop from the Vault of Glass raid by giving it the shine on top of being a flex. Not a lot of people were raiding back then, and having this loot was a definite show off. Another one I'm going to recommend for a straight up just fun time if you have the gun. The Matador 64. Oh shit, this takes me back. This shotgun was so much fun to use and had mad range, I'm telling you. If you thought pre-nerf Felwinters in D2 was bad, I mean it was, but then you ain't ready for Matador. Man, this thing passed a punch and was super good back in Destiny 1, but that's the end of the 5. Sorry guys, I'm not really a PvP gamer here, and I do more raids and PvE stuff, but I did love PvP and I still play it sometimes, and I wanted to mention some of my favorite guns. Before we can conclude this look back, I wanted to ask some of my friends if they feel Destiny 2 has lived up to its prior installment, and it's a resounding yes after Forsaken came out. So Destiny is a game. Yep, that's right, it sure is, and one of the best out there, if you want to go have some fun or are just interested in tryharding stuff. There's plenty to do in this incredible game and its sequel, and the journey this whole thing has taken us on. I started playing when I was a wee lad, and now I'd like to say it, I'm glad I grew up on this video game and its experiences. I've even met some longtime friends through this game, and I hope to make more along the way. I'll leave you to ponder the question for yourself. Do you think Destiny 1 was a trip to remember, or a poo stain, or anywhere in between? Thank you, my name is Bonk, and it's been a pleasure to weave you this tale of a game that will never be forgotten. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll put all the links down in the description. Thank you.